Hi, I'm Steve.
My name's John. Steve and I recently found ourselves with an opportunity to team teach a biology for majors class and wanted to share some of the experiences and insights that we've gotten from team teaching.
Yeah, so one of the first things as we came together was to think about where do our teaching philosophies align? And the challenge is taking two different people with two broadly different perspectives and finding alignment in terms of how they view the role of teaching.
Right. And in doing that, we were able to kind of pin down areas that we felt kind of energetic alignment and kind of take two or three focal points that we hoped would become kind of these themes as we went through the class. And I think, one of my takeaways is that in identifying those themes, having the bandwidth of both of us together helped us kind of both juggle the day-to-day content, but also there was a second mind that had chances to step further back and say, as we go through this lecture or as Steve's teaching or as I'm teaching, do we have deliberate ways in which we can kind of recenter and circle back to those themes of content and often kind of the bigger themes of like, how can we support these students beyond just the content in ways that, support their character growth and things like that.
Yep. And two of the themes that we really solidified on were the idea of like the classroom, that our educational experience should promote a community of learners. And associated with that is the perspective that learning is always a process. Like you don't get into a class and master it and you're done and you move on, but it's this idea that we're always in a process of becoming. And by early on in the semester, narrowing down at least on those two big ideas, we came back to those again and again and again. And the students were familiar with it. They knew what we were talking about. And we were held accountable to make sure that we kept doing with what we had initially agreed upon at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. As an example of, in the team teaching setting, I think one advantage that happened to be one of our goals, this idea of community of learning. We felt like, that connects to, kind of character building and personality development for the students. Also, creating communities, obviously gives them a chance to find belonging sooner in their degrees. This is the kind of first class for majors in our biology program, and so. With that being one of our goals, an advantage is that we were able to model little communities, like starting just with two people. You need at least two to make a community. And so as we went and prepped our lessons, for example, there were times in which we said, hey, how does this process work? We were prepping to be sure that we were aligned in terms of delivering accurate content. But there were moments that as we went through that sync up, we realized, wait a minute, why don't we just model this in class with an activity or with an interjected counterpoint that sets the students up to break out and work in their communities to clarify misconceptions and to kind of grow as learners by leaning on each other. And so in our prep, we were able to kind of center around this value of community and try to unpack the classroom experience in ways that really just modeled that dialogue that was ongoing for us throughout the semester.
And it wasn't always intentionally planned. I think part of this idea of the process of learning is mistakes are made. So sometimes as we're delivering whatever teaching element that we're doing in the classroom, mistakes would be made, or one of us may fail to close the loop, and we'd be able to model that idea of like, oh, I didn't quite do it as well as I hoped I would, or I didn't reach the outcome that I was hoping to. And the team teacher, John, would say, hey, Steve, you messed up there. Is that really what you meant to say? I think John, you're pretty kind to me most of the time. But following up and say, is that really what you meant to say? Are there other ways of thinking about this? And we model that vulnerability of like not being perfect and getting a voice from somebody else to improve.
Yeah, another benefit I saw was that there were times in which, maybe Steve would share something vulnerable or I would share something vulnerable, maybe relating to, my spiritual journey as a scientist, areas where I had to work hard to find some reconciliation between my faith and difficult topics, or just personal struggles, my family has a history of alcoholism, and Steve is able to stand up and say, hey, me too. And through that process of having a second voice, including in topics like, challenges to spirituality, personal challenges, it was a benefit to have a second voice to express empathy and to hopefully model and connect with the students in that way.
Yep. And I think when the students see two faculty members living different lives, coming together, supporting each other, it really does model belonging, I think, in ways that are valuable for our students, with the aim of meeting this idea like we're a community. Our goal is to continually learn and be a part of this process of becoming, and at least from our perspective, teaching this. That's what we shot for, and hopefully we hit it at least sometimes.
Yep, right on.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, John.